Hi, it's your favorite CPA, Keidra Flowers. Wanted to just come back one more time. I'm not going to go through every single case of reasonable cause, but as I told you, you can come to irs.gov/IRM part 20. And in under 20, that's penalties and interest. And if you look up reasonable cause, it's going to give you reasons potentially that would cause your penalties to be abatable, right? Now, nothing is ever guaranteed. So just because there was a death, that death in the family or serious illness needed to have an impact on your ability to file that tax return timely or to pay the amount of taxes due. So you have to make the connection between the issue and the taxes. And if it's multiple years, it's a little bit more cumbersome to try to make that connection. However, you should be able to make that connection. If the circumstances are real, usually there's not a problem. So let's just go through each of the different ones. Death, serious illness, unavoidable absence is one reasonable cause. So we've talked about that. And again, in the description is going to be a link to where you can download a sample if you'd like to of a pre-completed form that is editable, so that all you would need to change is the information to fit with your specific circumstance. But the form is completed. It's also going to be shown in the video sample, so you can download a blank form and complete it just as easily. If you download one that we've completed, again, you will need to update the sample information to your information. And of course, there is a fee for that because it does take time, and we are housing that information for a download for you. But fire, casualty, natural disaster, other disturbance, reasonable cause. So, this is a procedure manual for the IRS personnel. So everything is going to be written as if it's a training manual for how they should review your submission. So let's just read through fire, casualty, and natural disaster. Item 1, determine if the taxpayer could not comply timely because the taxpayer was an affected taxpayer eligible for a disaster relief, this is pandemic relief or an official disaster or something like that. For taxpayers not considered effective taxpayers for reasonable cause relief from a penalty, the relief can be requested if there was failure to timely comply with the requirement to file a return or pay tax as a result of fire, casualty, natural disaster, or other disturbance. However, one of these circumstances by itself does not necessarily provide penalty relief. So it needs to have happened, whether that was a fire, a flood, or other natural disaster, tornado. It needs to have happened. It needs to have affected your tax records in such a way that you were not able to prepare the tax return, or affected your housing, your life, your family's life in such a way that through emotional turmoil or whatever, you were unable and unavailable to file the tax return timely and correctly. Penalty relief may also be appropriate if the taxpayer exercised ordinary business care and prudence, but due to circumstances beyond the taxpayer's control, were unable to comply with the law. So again, a natural disaster, something that's beyond your control that happened on April 15th and you weren't able to do it, or happened in February and you were unable to get back and retrieve any of your documents or any of that. So you had to go through going back to prior employers, going back to prior vendors, and reconstructing your entire business for the year in order to file a tax return. So there are multiple reasons why and how these can relate. But again, you can come here, you can read. These are very short little glibbits that you can take a look at to see if you qualify. So I'm just going to go over the other headings. Unable to obtain records. So in the event of a fire or natural disaster, you might have been unable to get back to your records. I know during, I think it was 2021, we had the winter storm in Texas, and that was considered a disaster because many people lost their homes or they were displaced from their homes for many, many months. All their records destroyed, their clothing, things like that. So it's really sad when those things happen, but if there is a glimmer of light, it is that you can get some penalty relief. I mean, I know that's very minor in the whole scheme of things, but down the road, if something like this happens and you miss a couple years filing as a result of just trying to get your family back on track, definitely take the opportunity to request penalty relief for those periods. So unable to obtain records is one. A mistake was made. So the taxpayer may try to establish reasonable cause by claiming a mistake was made. Generally, this is not in keeping with the ordinary business care and prudence standard and does not provide a basis for reasonable cause. So be careful. That's why I said it's important to read these, because if you go in there and you look and say, oh, a mistake was made, that doesn't automatically mean they're going to remove it. However, the reason for the mistake may be a supporting factor if additional facts and circumstances support the determination that the taxpayer exercised ordinary business care and prudence, but nevertheless was unable to comply within the prescribed time. Information to consider when evaluating a request for an abatement or non-assertion of penalty based on a mistake or a claim of ignorance of law includes, but is not limited to, the following: when and how the taxpayer became aware of the mistake, the extent to which the taxpayer corrected the mistake, the relationship between the taxpayer and the subordinate if the taxpayer delegated the duty. Okay, so the relationship, whether the mistake was made by the taxpayer themselves, by their daughter who did their taxes that, didn't know, his 16-year-old daughter didn't know what she was doing online. So all of those things are going to play a role. There is never a time when a guarantee of penalty abatement stands. So it's always going to be based on what you submit and whether or not it qualifies. So you want to make sure that you submit your explanation in as much detail as you can. And you also want to submit any corresponding documentation that evidences your situation. So if there was a fire, if you got a statement from the fire department or the police chief, or whatever documents you would have had to provide to your insurance, attach those documents with this request for penalty abatement, and it definitely increases your chance for getting abatement. The next one is erroneous advice or reliance. So this is bad advice from someone who is worth taking advice from. So, an ideal situation would be if you got bad advice from an IRS employee. So you contacted the IRS and recorded the person's name and ID number that you spoke with, and you were provided incorrect information. I'll give you a situation where I've seen that happen, and that was when we had the winter storm. And so the deadline, we were given an additional 2 months to file the tax returns for taxpayers in Texas during that time. And information was kind of coming down the track, but everybody was a little confused and flustered. And so there was a period of time where erroneous information was provided, and people thought that they had an automatic extension until October, and that wasn't the case. It was only an extension of the original deadline. So that was from April through June, and then you had to file an additional extension still in June if you needed that extension until October. So that's a case where, you might have relied on erroneous advice. In that situation, though, it also can go under natural disaster. So many of these may apply, and I would list each one that applied in my case if I were requesting. Ignorance of law, that's just, I don't know. I do my own taxes. I don't know. I did not understand. I did look up the filing deadline for an S corp, and I knew that it needed to be filed by March 15th. However, I thought it was March 15th of the following year, not if I set it up in December that I needed to file one for that year, because we didn't actually open until the following year. So, you want to explain, and not saying that's going to work for you, but you want to explain what you thought the rule was, what you found out the law was, what you did after that. And then you also want to give some background on your education. I've attempted to do this myself all these years. I filed the 1040 and it was pretty straightforward. I didn't realize filing an LLC or an S corp was going to be so much different. And so that was my own, ignorance of understanding the law and not necessarily hiring someone. However, I ask, you respectfully ask that you will abate these penalties this one time. As soon as I realized that I had done it wrong, from then on, I have used a professional tax preparer, and you want to show evidence of that, right? And that can help. Now, forgetfulness and inaccessible notices, if the notice goes to the wrong place, or your let's say the notice comes and you're unable to read the notice. So all of these are reasons that penalties can be removed. And so just wanted to go over that with you and hopefully help you. Again, in the link below, there is a link that you can go to where you can download samples of certain penalties. And all you would need to do is edit the form to update it for your year and your circumstances. I only did the most common of reasons for penalty abatements that I see. However, if there is a reason on here that you believe your penalty should be abated, or you've applied and it was denied, you're definitely welcome to reach out to us directly. We do this as a business, so we do charge for our services. However, if it is something that is just happens to be a sample that I did not do, but you'd like to see it, comment, tell me in the comments, and I'd be happy to add a sample to the download list for you. All right. Have a great day and happy penalty removal. Best of luck to you. And if you like what I'm putting out here, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the page, and share it. Thanks. That's how you can help.